This is a shiny, brand spanking new Microtrains New York Central boxcar. And I'm going to make it dirty. Alright, let's open her up. So pretty. So nice and clean. And this is the last time I'm going to see it clean. We're doing some very simple weathering techniques that are not very difficult to do and do not require any specialized materials to do them. You can find them almost anywhere. Let's get started. The supplies you're going to need for this is this artist pencil sharpener pad, some pastels with some colors that you're going to want, and just some cheapo brushes. You're also going to see me use some super glue in this tutorial, as well as a zip tie, and if you want to seal in your weathering job, I recommend using some dull coat. Let's get started. The first thing I do is I take my pastels and I grind them into a fine powder on the artist sandpaper pencil sharpener. And what I start with is typically a neutral brown. I just need to get the car looking a little bit dirty before I go to any sort of a rusty color. And this is going to do a great job just getting that grime and everything done. Next, I'm going to take and just kind of tap the powder where it falls over one side of the boxcar that I'm working on. Then I'm just going to take a brush and begin to kind of tap in and really grind in the powder that I've created just to make it even finer so that it kind of spreads out and gets nice and even. Now, one thing you're going to want to do once you get the powder all grounded up is make sure that it kind of flows from top to bottom on the car, because a lot of the grime is going to be run off from rain from the car being sitting outside. So that's what you're going to want to do. But again, this is just the base coat of the weathering we're going to do just to get the car a little bit less clean. Once you've done this side, you just kind of repeat it, the process going from side to side and on the ends as well. Now, where everything gets a little bit different is when we switch to weathering the roof. Now, the reason the weathering the roof is different is because this is where the most contact with the elements is going to be, other than coming up directly from the ground. You're going to have all the rain and everything coming down on the roof. So we need to do a little bit extra to the roof and really pile it on. One thing that I like to do is literally take the pastels and actually do the grinding directly on the roof grates, and this will get a lot of the pastels. It's not going to permanently mark on there unless you really just bear down on it, so don't go too hard, but you can see just the little lines of the ground up pastels starting to get on there. And once you bring your brush on, you'll be able to brush most of that off, but this is going to allow it to get caked on just a little bit thinner. And you notice I'll have a brighter red. I'm going to come back and kind of mute these colors with some more pastels. I'm going to put the most pastels I'm going to put anywhere on this car on the roof, again, to get that really heavy weathered look, because this is the surface that's getting the most weathering in the real world. You can see now I'm coming back with a more of an orangey color just to kind of mix with that red, just to get the rust a little bit more pronounced. And this really does a really great job of that, especially after you have sealed it in. And there you go. And you can see it's just really starting to really make the roof look like it has been out in the elements for quite a while now. Next up, we need to weather the trucks. This is actually something I see quite a few people miss when they're weathering. They get so obsessed with weathering the body of the cars that they kind of leave the trucks out. So I take my orange rusty color without the red, and I really just brush it on these right here. If you're going to seal these with dull coat, which is what I intend to eventually do, make sure when you do it to take the wheels off so that you don't have anything weird happen with the wheels, and then put them back on. But this is just the same process. I'm actually blending a little bit of brown in there with it, just to kind of mute that crazy rusty orange color. Just doing the same thing over and over again. It's a lot of rinse and repeat on this. It's just a matter of what looks good to your eye. Remember, model railroading is a massive illusion where you're just trying to make everything look realistic as possible, and this is just another part of it. It's not necessarily what it's actually going to look like, but what looks good to your eye. Now, this was actually a super easy way that I discovered on how to do runoff lines off the top of a car. So what I do here is I take a little bit of super glue, which I have dabbed on that little piece of tape right there, and I have a very small zip tie just so I can have that flexible edge with a firm tip. And I'm basically drawing lines down the rivet lines of the boxcar, and I'm using very little super glue. You can see I'm totally comfortable doing my fingers on it without it's that little bit of super glue. And I'm basically just doing the super glue
absolute equivalent of dry brushing, just to get where it'll catch just a little bit of the weathering powder that I'm going to put on it. Now, once again, you're just going to grind some pastels and tap them over it, and then you're really going to want to just do like kind of a very gentle brushing, just so you can get enough to where it kind of highlights those lines just barely. You really don't want them to be overpowering, but it'll just be enough to give the hint of these runoff lines, because these runoff lines are not something that in the real world are painted on. They're literally just rust lines or dirt and grime lines, and you want it to look like that. And I see a lot of people that do a great job painting these lines on, but that can be very difficult, and that takes a lot of skill, and kudos to those guys. This is a very simple way to get the feel of those runoff lines without having to go crazy with different things, and I've had a lot of success with this method. So once you get the powder on there, it's pretty much stuck on there and you are good to go. We then just repeat the process on the other side. I don't do every rivet line with these. If you want to, that's totally fine. It's whatever looks good to you. That's the biggest thing about this. But you'll also know that I switched over to the little black brushes. Those are my cheapo brushes. And I know that I was probably going to ruin that yellow brush, and I really like that yellow brush. So I switched over to the black brushes just to do a little bit of the streaking here. And then again, just grinding and just rinse and repeat with this. It's a lot of that with the weathering, but this technique works extremely well, and I'm extremely happy with the way it came out. Now, if you want to seal everything in, this is the point where you would go and spray it with dull coat. Just be careful with your couplers and your trucks.
Once you've put your sealant of choice on it, this car is ready to be on your layout, and here is the final result. I am very happy with the way this looks. I've used this technique on multiple cars before, and it works out great. I'm not using anything fancy. I'm getting stuff from my local arts and crafts chain store, and it's just really simple to do. These things don't have to be complicated, but you can get as complicated and as detailed as you want. If you want to do that, I suggest checking out the channel. They make it like that. He does some really good weathering and detail work on his stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, and happy railroading.